Wow. We've got Carolina from Chile, Shauna, Malati, Lay. Andrea, how did your class go yesterday, your Bhakti Center class? I was so sorry to miss it. Were you happy?
Yes, it was ecstatic. I sent you the link to the recording.
Okay. Carolina, what's your daughter's name?
Rasarani.
Rasarani.
Yes, Rasarani. Rasarani and Madhavi.
And Madhavi.
Wow,
Madhavi.
they're
Welcome
so
to
Madhavi.
Urban Devi. They're the future of Urban Devi.
Yes.
they're so beautiful. Well, it's so nice to have everyone here. And Andrea, it was so amazing seeing you yesterday and catching up with you and your husband and your dog. And it's so amazing seeing you, Sarah, after a long time. I want to see you in person. And everyone who's here, Lee, it's so amazing to see you. Thank you so much for joining. I miss you so much. And we have Malati and Shauna and Carolina. We're all so happy that you're here. Thank you so much for joining Urban Devi. I can't believe it's already April, the end of April, our April Sanga. And we have a very special guest today, Syama Sangita. We're so happy to have her here with us. She was actually born and raised in Queens, New York City. And she's a stand-up comedian, which makes me so excited for today's session because I love laughing. And she's performed on hundreds of stages in Canada, US, UK, and Hong Kong, which is pretty cool. And yeah, she said that she basically grew up in Toronto, which is really cool. And wanting to take her craft to new heights, she decided to combine her love for humor and love for Eastern spirituality and founded the Hopeful Hindu. So if you want to check that out, go to www.thehopefulhindu.com, which is actually a speaking company that combines stand-up comedy and ancient spiritual wisdom from the East. So I'm definitely going to check that website out. And she currently lives in LA and works. Oh my God, you work for Jay Shetty. I love Jay Shetty. That's so cool. We'll have to talk, creating conscious media content for the world. So today she's going to talk to us about ultimate life hacks from the Bhagavad Gita, which is funny because when I heard that title before reading your bio, I was like, that sounds like a totally Jay Shetty title. So I'm not surprised that you work with Jay Shetty, who we all love. So yeah, I'll turn it on over to you. Go for it.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. It's a whirlwind of where I'm from. So I was born in New York, raised in Toronto, Canada. So I'm half Canadian, half American, live in LA now. And currently I'm in Lynchburg, Virginia for a wedding. So the most random things. And so I'd love to know where everybody else is from. Just like shout it out wherever, what city you're dialing in from. Yeah, Sarah, go ahead.
I'm from Detroit.
Oh, nice. Okay, perfect. Anybody else that's not in Detroit? And there's Chile in here.
Chile, Washington area. Michelle.
Philadelphia, nice.
Susan's from Maine. It might be snowing
nice.
there, but I'm not sure.
All right. That's wow. This is like all over America and South America. That's awesome. So I'm super, super excited to be here with you guys today. My spiritual name is Syama Sangita. My normal person name is Asta. It sounds like pasta. Pretty simple, right? No, people screw it up all the time. I've heard every single variation. I get a lot of astral, I get a lot of Esther. One time this old Indian man came up to me and he's like, hasta la vista, baby. And I'm like, Grandpa, that's weird. Please don't call me that anymore. But you guys can call me Asta, like pasta, or Syama Sangita, whatever you want. But I'm super, super excited to be here with you guys today. It's gonna be a fun one. It's gonna be a weird one, but it's gonna be a fun one. I want to share my screen and do a little presentation for you. The topic of today is called life hacks from the Bhagavad Gita. How many of you, show of hands, have heard of the Bhagavad Gita before? Okay, a good chunk. Yeah, a good chunk of you. All right, sounds good. So we're gonna dive deeper into that today. And excuse me, I'm gonna share this little screen here. Let me know if you guys can see everything. Good. We got a thumbs up. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Love it. Okay. So it's life hacks from the Bhagavad Gita. And so this book, I'm sure you guys know, super, super ancient book, thousands and thousands of years old. What is a life hack though? A life hack is a tip or a trick or an efficient method of doing something to make life easier, right? So we're taking this new modern concept called life hacks and combining it with Eastern old Vedic spirituality. And so like we're taking the golden nuggets of this beautiful book and seeing how we can use it to manage our day-to-day life. And so that's what we're doing today, life hacks from the Bhagavad Gita. So I'm super, super excited that you guys are here with me. As you know, this is a giant book, 18 chapters, 700 verses. I promise you, we're not going to go through all of them because then it's going to be a 27-hour Zoom call. We are not going to go through all of them, but we are going to go through the gems of wisdom. That's why I put those. It's a low budget presentation, so I just put emojis on here just to signify all of my emotions. So it's a lot of gems of wisdom that we're going to cover today in the Gita, and a lot of them there's like secret knowledge, right? It's like your best friend telling you secrets when you're a kid, and then you're like, oh my God, like this is like, I need to hold this close to my heart because it's like, it's very profound, beautiful knowledge. And sometimes when I'm personally having a bad day, there are times where I would just open the Gita and I would find a verse and it like something would just click. It's like beautiful, magical knowledge. And so we're going to get to it. However, we are going to talk about the two main characters of the Gita, right? So there's Krishna and there's Arjuna. How do you recognize Krishna? Bada bing, bada boom. Yeah, peacock feather, always a peacock feather. That's what you know. And one time, like when I used to go to Hindu temples when I was a kid, I grew up in like a very conservative Hindu household, and my mom would force me to go to the temples, and there would be so many different idols and deities, and I didn't know what any of them were, but I always recognized Krishna from the peacock feather and bada bing, bada boom, the flute. Okay, so that's one of the characters that we're going to talk about today, and he's kind of like the authority figure on the Gita, right? The second also Krishna loves cows. This is the characteristics. Krishna loves cows. It's going to be mostly pictures in this presentation. So again, low budget presentation. And he loves butter. I know it looks like cheese, but he loves butter. And he's also from a town called Vrindavan, which is a place that you can actually visit today. I'm sure some of you have already been there, but it's a really cool town. And so yeah, that's the characteristics of one of our characters. The other character is his cousin. His cousin is named Arjuna, and he has a mustache. This is the cartoon version on the left hand side, and then the real life made for TV version. And I always imagine him with a mustache. And so the TV version never had a mustache. So I'm gonna draw one in right now. So that's the mustache for Arjuna, right? He's always gonna have the mustache, and that's how I differentiate Arjuna and Krishna when I was a kid. I was like, one has a mustache, one has a peacock feather. Okay, cool, got it. And so sometimes I always get reminded of like when I'm going through the grocery aisle and I see a can of Pringles, and I always think Arjuna. Like I was like, oh yeah, the mustache guy, the guy like the Pringles logo, that's Arjuna. Okay, so I hope that whenever you go through the grocery store and you see a can of Pringles, I want you to think of Arjuna, okay? Because that's how I remember the difference between these two main characters. Okay, so we've dived deeper into these two main characters, right? Krishna and Arjuna. And so essentially this giant book is one long conversation between these two main characters. And then there's a battlefield, right? If you look at any picture of the Bhagavad Gita, there's always Krishna and Arjuna with a bunch of horses on a chariot, surrounded by thousands and thousands of people on a battlefield. And I never understood why they were on a battlefield. And then I was like, okay, let's dive deeper into this, because the first chapter of this book can get very confusing because everyone's on a battlefield, everyone's blowing conch shells. It gets a little crazy. But let's go deeper into why everybody is on a battlefield. And then we'll get to the life hacks, and all of it will make sense. I'm just going to take you on a little bit of a journey. So this actual war, there's actual battlefield, is a place called Kurukshetra, which is a place that you can actually visit in India today. So why is everybody fighting? Okay, so we're going to get down to it. How many of you have seen The Lion King before? Okay, a good chunk of you, right? A good chunk of you. I'm glad. And so essentially the story of the Gita, the greater Gita, is the story of these two brothers, right? One was evil, like Scar, right? Scar's on the left, and one was good. And so essentially they're kings, like they're from a royal family. Both of them are brothers, and one of them is hella evil, right? His name is Dhritarashtra, but I can't pronounce that like over and over again. So we're just going to call him Evil D. Okay. We're going to call him Evil D. And he had a good brother. His name was Pandu. We're going to call him Polite Pandu just for me being able to pronounce everything properly. Right. So there's Evil D and there's Polite Pandu, brothers, royalty. And then Evil D, he had 100 evil sons. Okay. Don't ask me how 100 sons happened. Contraception was not a thing back then. He just had 100 evil sons. Okay. They were all terrible. They were all evil. And then Polite Pandu, his brother, had 5 good sons. Okay. 5 good sons. And one of which was who we met earlier, Arjuna. Okay. Remember the guy with the mustache. Okay. So the polite Pandu had 5 good sons, one of which was Arjuna. We got a mustache on him now, so everybody knows. All right. So, dun, 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 dun. Oh my God, Polite Pandu dies. Polite Pandu dies, and Scar didn't really kill him. He just kind of died on his own. It's like a whole longer story that we're not going to get into it. But Polite Pandu dies, and so the whole problem exists now is like, who's going to inherit the kingdom, right? It comes down to a Game of Thrones style battle. How many of you have seen Game of Thrones? Any of you? Or heard of it at least? Okay, a few of you, right? So Game of Thrones is essentially what modern, like it's basically a fight over power and land, right? And it's kind of, if you think about it, it's kind of like what's happening in the world today. It's fighting over power and land, right? So this concept of fighting over these things is not a foreign concept. We've been doing it as human beings for thousands of years, right? And so it comes down to this war of power and land. And essentially it's the 100 evil sons versus the 5 good sons, right? And the 5 good sons are trying to just find a place to live. And the 100 evil sons are basically like, nope, your dad's dead. Like, you have to leave this land. You have to be banished, right? And it's like, they've tried so many different ways to negotiate. Like, we'll just live on a little part of our land with our family. We're not going to bother you. They're trying different ways to negotiate. And their dad, unfortunately, their dad's passed away, and the 100 evil sons are kind of just taking over this land, and they're not allowing the 5 good sons to live, even on a tiny piece of land. Therefore, the battle starts, right? And so it comes down to this huge battle of war and land. And if you ever see, this is one of my favorite pictures. If you ever see any picture of the Bhagavad Gita, there's always Krishna and Arjuna on a chariot with horses, and these thousands and thousands of people, and the conversation that these two are having, like hundreds of thousands of soldiers are listening to it, right? So it's like they're kind of like waiting, and they're like tapping their foot, waiting for the war to start. But Krishna and Arjuna are in the middle of a conversation, so they can't interrupt. So like they're like on Candy Crush on their phones, like trying to like wait until the war is starting. But like probably they didn't have Candy Crush back then. But like they're just like standing and waiting for the war to start, and these two are having a conversation. So I just love that, because I think it's fascinating that everyone's just like, well, I just came to show up for the war. and it's like not going to happen for another like 18 chapters. So that's the background. I hope that makes sense, right? It's like why we're on a battlefield, who the main characters are, why they're fighting. Let me know. We can have questions at the end, but I hope everyone is kind of with me with what's going on, right? So chapter 1, okay, perfect, love it. Okay, chapter 1 of Gita is one of the most confusing chapters. As a kid growing up, like as a teenager growing up reading the Gita, I would always skip chapter 1, because let me just tell you what chapter 1 is. Chapter 1 is a giant, like, when someone like name drops and like they try to see like who's cooler. Chapter 1 is all name dropping, right? It's like who's on this side and who's on this side, and one of the hype man is like a conch shell, right? So when you're ready for the war, people blow their conch shell. So they'll blow their conch shell. The 100 evil sons are blowing their conch shell. The 5 good sons and everyone on their side is blowing their conch shell. And they all have different names, and they're all name dropping. And so chapter 1 is very confusing. I usually skip over it, but I'll tell you right now, it's all about blowing the conch shells, getting ready for the start of this war. Cool? Now, this is where the juicy part comes. Chapter 2 is where the life hacks start to happen. And that's what we're going to get into. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Chapter 2 is where all the juicy stuff starts. Because at the end of chapter 1, who gets cold feet? Arjuna gets cold feet. He gets cold feet, and he's just like, dude, Krishna, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but he's like, dude, Krishna, I don't think I could do this. Like, on the other side of this battlefield are my cousins and my uncles and my grandpa. You want me to kill my grandpa? Are you crazy? And like Arjuna grew up with these people, right? He grew up with these people. They also happen to be kind of like a little bit evil, like a lot of bit evil, but he grew up with these people, and he's just like, Krishna, you want me to kill them now? So he's getting nervous, right? He's getting nervous as to like, is that the best resort to all this? I know we negotiated, and I know that they're not letting us live, but is this the best thing to do? Is this the best thing to kill them? And so this is, I actually just love this picture. This is, if I could get this framed in my house, I would. It just, he just basically asked Krishna for advice, right? And Krishna is his cousin, but he's also his friend and his mentor. And so he said, Krishna, what do I do? I see across this battlefield all of my family members, and I know they're being evil, and they're being like, they're full of injustice. So what should I do? And Krishna basically lays down all of the life hacks, right? And Arjuna is kind of like representation of us, right? How many of you, by show of hands, have had some sort of existential crisis during this pandemic? It can't just be just me, right? Okay, a couple of you, right? And thank you for your honesty. I think I've had one every couple months, right? Where I'm just like, what am I doing? What is the point of life? Like, what if this pandemic is never over? Like, I've had so many of those so many times. And I think Arjuna is having one of those moments as well. He's asking, he's kind of asking the questions that we ask when we have existential crises, right? It's like, Krishna, who am I? What am I supposed to do here? What is my purpose here? How do I find happiness? How do I eliminate bad days? How do I have more good days than bad days? What is meditation? What is the point of life? And I love that, because Arjuna is asking the same questions that we usually ask ourselves as spiritual seekers. And these are big questions, right? They're not questions that like someone who's not inclined to spirituality is going to ask. These are big questions. And so Krishna breaks down the life hacks, okay? And so we're going to get into the 5 made ones, and then I'll have a 6 bonus one. But he basically breaks down life hacks. And so the first life hack that he teaches us is this concept between the difference between the body versus the soul, right? And it's he basically says, Arjuna, you need to chill out, because you have to understand that we have a body, but all of us are spirit souls. What does that even mean, though? What does that even mean? It means that like once we die, we don't actually die. Our body actually, our body dies, but our soul moves on to another body at the time of birth. Chapter 2, Krishna is hinting at this notion of reincarnation, which is very, very, very important to Eastern philosophies, right? It's this fact that like our body might die, we might lose people in our lives, but that soul will go on to another body, and that cycle will continue and continue and continue. So Arjuna, you have nothing to worry about, right? And so it's kind of like this was explained to me a few years ago as this notion, this analogy of a funeral, right? It's like when you go to a funeral and you see a body there, and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe he's gone. But what does he's gone mean, right? The body is still there. So according to Eastern philosophy, the thing that we believe is gone is the soul. The soul has left and moved on to a different body. And it's kind of like, you know, it's this notion that like, I also love this analogy of like, we're all models, right? Like we're all models, we're all wearing different dresses in every single lifetime, right? This this lady in particular is wearing a kick-ass purple dress. And so that is her sort of costume or dress or makeup in this lifetime. And we all have that. We're all doing a round on the runway every single lifetime. And once we go backstage, we switch to a different outfit, right? And that might mean that I might be an Indian female in this lifetime. I might be an African-American man in my next lifetime. It's just a different bodily dress, right? But the soul is the same. Does that make sense? So Krishna is trying to explain this concept of like, hey, like every lifetime, your bodily dress will change, but your soul will remain the same. So do not worry about killing these people, because they're not going to die. Their soul will never die. And he in chapter 2, Krishna does this beautiful job of explaining how powerful the soul really is. You know, the soul is kind of like Wolverine. I don't know if how many of you have seen X-Men, but like Wolverine, like you can't kill Wolverine. Wolverine is like the one of the coolest and strongest X-Men, right? That's kind of like the soul. So Krishna breaks it down as to, you know, the soul is something that can never be defeated, right? It can never die. It can never be shot. It can never be killed. It can never be burnt by fire. It can never be drowned. It can never be withered by the wind. It can never be attacked by a toilet plunger. I don't know why I put that gif in there. I just thought that was really funny. I love Sandro. So it can never, nothing can damage the soul, because the soul is forever. And Krishna brings up this concept of everything else is temporary, right? So do not worry, because you might kill them in this lifetime, but the soul will always, always, always be there. So do not worry. Your job as a soldier is to serve justice, and that is what you're supposed to do. And so that is essentially life hack number one, right? This notion of understanding the difference between the body and the soul. And to be honest, that is a life hack that particularly me, like my father passed away about 5 months ago. And my solace has been chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, because of this notion of like, okay, like we're going to meet again, because I'm going to see my father again in another lifetime, you know? And so that has been such a strong life hack for me in particular. And so I hope that all made sense, the whole body versus soul concept. I'm going to move on to life hack number 2, which is detachment. And this is something that I try to exercise every single day. A lot of times I fail at it, but every single day trying a detachment. So what does detachment really mean? In Eastern philosophy, this notion has been thrown out all the time. Like, what is detachment, right? Does it mean apathy? Does it mean not engaging? Does it mean not caring? I think it still means caring, but this is the best definition that I like to use for detachment. So on the screen, it says detachment is the ability to not worry about the things that are out of your control. Okay. I'm gonna repeat that. Detachment is the ability to not worry about the things that are out of your control. Right? Easier said than done. As human beings, we worry about everything, right? We worry about what the weather's going to be tomorrow, what someone's going to think of this lasagna that we made. We worry about like, oh my God, I had too much Taco Bell last night. Like, I don't know if I'm going to make it through the rest of this Zoom call. You know what I mean? Like, we worry about so many things in our lives. And I think the key is to not worry. It's just to understand what is in our control and what is not in our control, right? It still means try your best. But not worrying about the things that are out of your control. I'll give you a personal example of how I've had to learn detachment in my life. So I do stand-up comedy. I've been doing stand-up comedy for almost 12 years now. And I remember the very first time that I bombed on stage. Okay, so this is probably like 2011, like a very long time ago. And it was my 3rd time on stage ever. And I promise you, every single comedian remembers the very first time that they bomb on stage, because it is the worst feeling in the entire world. Like every comedian from Chris Rock to Amy Schumer to Wanda Sykes, everybody remembers that very first time, because it's terrifying. And I remember I was like so new to comedy, and I wrote this joke, and I thought it was the most genius joke ever. It was like a joke about Taylor Swift or something like that. And I was like, this is genius. I'm an academic genius. I'm the best writer in the world. And I remember walking on stage with so much confidence, and I told this joke, and no one laughed. And all I wanted to do was crawl off of stage and crawl into bed and never tell a joke again for the rest of my life. Like, it was like so disheartening. Like, I could feel it in my stomach. And I only realized months later why I was so like hurt by that. Because as a comedian, the only thing that I can control is how well I tell my jokes, how well I write my jokes. And that is it. The moment the joke leaves my lips, I have no control over it whatsoever. So why stress out about the things that you can't control, right? Why stress out about things you can't control? And so the formula for detachment is simple, very, very simple. All we have to do is try our best. And I know that sounds like something that your mom tells you when you like fall off your tricycle for like the 17th times, like just try your best, Berta. You know, like it sounds so simple, but it's just do your best. Plus, give up the worry about the outcome. Give up the worry about the results. Give up the worry about the expectations. And that is detachment. And that's what Krishna is also trying to tell Arjuna at the same time. It's like your duty is to be a soldier and to serve justice. So do your best. Plus, give up the worry about what's going to happen after. Just try your best. And that is detachment. And I feel like we can use this, like I use this formula every single day of my life, because at the end of the day, I can stress out about so many little things, but I have to remember, okay, take a deep breath. All I can do is try my best and not worry about anything else. So I hope life hack number 2 has been beneficial to you. This is the formula for detachment. Life hack number 3, happiness. Isn't that such an elusive concept, right? Aren't we all just trying to be happy, right? No one wakes up in the morning and plans to have a crappy day, right? Nobody's like, oh my God, I hope there's bumper to bumper traffic all on the highway today, right? No one plans to have crappy days. To some degree, we all desire happiness, right? And there's things in the way that sometimes get in the way of that happiness. There's people, there's situations. In my case, there's old Indian aunties that are like, why aren't you getting married yet? Like everyone is just trying to deter my happiness. And so there's just that big question is like, how do we be happy, right? And so Krishna breaks this down for Arjuna, and he breaks this down in the most beautiful way. And he talks about our senses, right? Our 5 senses. We know all these 5 senses. And he breaks it down into like, okay, so happiness is directly related to how we can sort of control these wild senses. And I'll give you an example. Like our senses can be crazy. Like we can think about so many different things in a day. On Friday, actually, I put the slide in on the weekend because on Friday, I saw a billboard on my way to work for a cinnamon roll. I just saw like a billboard for it, and it was just like this beautiful giant cinnamon roll. And that's all that I could think about all day. That was like in my mind, my mouth was watering. And like, I also had a lot of meetings on Friday. And so like meeting after meeting after meeting, and all I'm thinking about is this cinnamon roll. I'm not even concentrating on this meeting. And so like, this is an example of like how my senses sort of drove me crazy, because that's all I was thinking about, right? And this happens with advertisements for food, advertisements for cars and luxury goods and jewelry. Like whenever we see things that we want, it kind of like riles up our senses a little bit, right? And when we don't get those things, it's very disheartening. And so Arjuna and Krishna, they talk about, this is a very different analogy. I'm going to give you a very different analogy than what's on screen right now, but they talk about this notion of the senses. And so who are we again? We're the soul, right? And so we are the soul. And so how do we have a peaceful and happy time in this crazy life, right? So there's an analogy that I use. How many of you have ever walked a dog before? Yep, a few people. Okay, perfect, right? Now imagine trying to walk a dog without a leash. It's so difficult to do that. Now imagine you're a dog walker. I actually was a dog walker when I was 16, and I had to walk a bunch of dogs. I didn't have to walk 14 of them like you see on the screen right now. But imagine having to walk 14 dogs with no leashes. Imagine how crazy that would be, right? Like you would lose your job because you would lose all those dogs, right? It would be a mess. And so this analogy that I like to break down is like the dogs are kind of like our senses, right? They kind of just want to do their own thing. They want to sniff on this. They want to pee on this pole. Like they would just want to do whatever they want to do. That's what dogs do, right? They just do whatever they want to do. So the leashes are kind of like our mind, right? Our mind can control our senses to some degree, where they're like, okay, I'm going to keep you in check because now you can't just roam around free. And here is the most important part. The holder of the leashes is our intelligence, right? So our senses are like, oh my God, I want a cinnamon roll. This is going to be fantastic. Our mind is like, okay, cool. Let's find the way to the cinnamon roll. And our intelligence is like, oh no, you've had 72 cinnamon rolls today. You're going to get diabetes. So that is our intelligence controlling our mind, controlling our senses. Why? Why is all this happening? Is because we're the soul, right? And the only way that the soul can have a happy walk, a happy journey through life, is to make sure that all of these things are in check. Does that make sense? The only way that we as spirit souls can have a happy walk through life, the only way that we can do that is to make sure that all of these things are in check. Because if the leashes and the intelligence aren't put in place, then our walk is going to be frantic and crazy, and we're going to lose our dog walking license. Okay. So I hope this analogy makes sense. Does it make sense? Yeah. A little bit. Okay, perfect. So I think that's what Krishna and Arjuna, they're talking about, keeping all of these things in check. So Krishna also mentions this, and this is one of my favorite quotes from the Gita, is like, your mind can be your best friend or your worst enemy. And I'm sure you've all have heard of that before. And it's true, right? It's like every single day is a battle between our friendship and our enemyship with our mind. And at the end of the day, how do we control that? How do we get better at making sure that the soul has a peaceful journey? It brings us to life hack number 4, meditation. And so we've all heard the numerous benefits. I'm not even going to go into it. The numerous scientific benefits of meditation, reducing cortisol, reducing blood pressure, all of that fun stuff, right? We all know what those benefits are, right? And Krishna really breaks it down, because Arjuna asked this one question. He's like, how do I control my mind? How do I become at peace? And Krishna says, you can't have happiness without peace. And so finding a way to peace is one of the most important things. And you do it through meditation, right? And so it's kind of like, how many of you have ever taken a toddler to a grocery store, a hungry toddler to a grocery store? Like it's crazy. Like it's just like a psychotic mess. It's just like so wild. Taking a hungry toddler to a grocery store is like probably one of the top things that I never want to do, because our mind can sometimes do that. Our mind, when we're trying to meditate, can go into every single aisle of our mind and just like think of the most random things when we're trying to meditate, right? Our mind does the weirdest things. Kids do the weirdest things in grocery stores. Our mind does the same thing. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to just do a 4-minute meditation. We're just going to do a 4-minute breathing exercise together. And this is what we're going to do. It's not going to be mantra meditation. It's going to just be a breathing exercise, right? And we have to remember that the child is our mind. Our mind is going to go into every single aisle, pull the Apple Jacks, pull the Fruit Loops. They're trying to do everything and make a ruckus. But we have to bring the child back to the cart. And what is the cart? The cart is whatever you're trying to focus on. And so our area of focus today is going to be our breath. Wherever you feel your breath, whether it's in your nose or in your chest or in your belly, take the crazy child, bring it back to the point of focus, bring it back to the cart, right? And your mind is going to wander. It's going to wander the halls of all of these grocery stores, but bring it back to the cart, right? Bring it back to the focus. It's going to wander, and I'm going to distract you a little bit too while you're meditating, but the whole point is to bring it back to your breath. Okay, ready? Take that crazy child, bring it back to breath. And every time you take that, every time your mind wanders and you bring it back to the point of focus, it's kind of like you're doing a bicep curl for the mind, right? It's okay that your mind wanders, but if you bring it back to the point of focus, you're making your mind stronger and stronger and stronger, okay? So it's let it wander, but always bring it back. So we're just gonna do a couple minutes of meditation together. I want you to sit nice and tall wherever you're sitting. And I want these to be the longest, deepest breaths of your entire life, okay? These are just like inhales for 4s, exhales for 6. That would be awesome. And every time your mind wanders, just bring it back, okay? So feel free to sit up nice and tall, close your eyes, and we are going to begin. And every time your mind wanders away, just bring it back to your breath. I'm going to try to distract you a little bit, but every time I try to distract you, I just want you to focus on your breath, okay? Caw-caw, caw-caw, caw-caw. Focus on your breath, focus on your breath. There's going to be a lot of distractions in life, but as long as you can focus. Caw-caw, caw-caw. Deep breaths. The final 30 seconds of very deep breaths. All right, take one final deep breath in, final deep breath out. And isn't that great? Like literally I just set a timer on my phone for 4 minutes, and it just, you feel so different and you feel so much lighter when you just breathe deeply for a couple minutes. And that is one of the life hacks that we get from the Bhagavad Gita, which takes us to life hack number 5. Thank you so much for meditating with me, everybody. That was, I even feel a little bit like better and looser. So life hack number 5 is the goal of life. We've all asked this during our existential crises. What is the goal of life, right? And so Krishna breaks this down for Arjuna in a very simple way. He says something called bhakti yoga. Bhakti means love, and yoga is a Sanskrit word. Yoga actually means to connect to something higher than yourself. So the whole point of life is to connect to something higher than yourself with love, right? That's all it is. That's the whole shebang. It's like finding that beautiful personal relationship with God or the universe or your hamster, whatever you think is greater than yourself. And it's totally up to you. In Bhakti Yoga philosophy, we call him Krishna. You call him, you can call him Jesus or Allah or Yahweh or wherever you want to call him or her, it doesn't matter. But it's developing that beautiful, loving relationship with something greater than yourself. And that is essentially the goal of life. And it's kind of this beautiful notion, because that's what we're all chasing for at the end of the day. Like, we as human beings need love. We crave love. We turn into crazy hobbits without it. You know what I mean? We need love. And so Krishna breaks down how to have a beautiful relationship with something higher than yourself, right? And so he is so simply breaks it down into this one verse. He says, if one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it, right? And it's kind of like when you're trying to develop a relationship with someone in your life, whether it's your mother or your father or your cousin or your best friend or your partner, what do you do to show them love? You do things for them from the goodness of your heart, right? And it's essentially the same thing in Bhakti Yoga, is doing things from the goodness of your heart with the intention of love for something higher than yourself, right? And all of these things that Krishna mentions, all of these are free. It's not like he's like, I'd love $500,000 so you could do this for me. Or like, there's no like money exchange. It's all like free stuff that we can give. And it comes down to that intention and that loving, pure intention of love. And so this notion of how to be more spiritual has also come up in the Gita as well. And so how do we be more spiritual? And Krishna gives us so many loopholes as to how to develop a more spiritual attitude towards life. And he says you can be a monk living in the Himalayas and all you do is meditate all the time. But if you can't do that, just work for the welfare of other people. Do things in your life that help humanity. And if you can't do that, that's okay too. Just spend time meditating, right? So Krishna gives like more and another set of loopholes and another set of life hacks as to how to be more spiritual. If you can't do this, then do this. If you can't do this, then do this. And it's okay, just as long as you're making an effort and you're putting in that intention. And here is the bonus. So we talked about a couple life hacks, okay? So the first one was the body versus the soul and understanding the difference between those two and how helpful that can be in life. The second one was detachment, right? Trying your best in life, but not worrying about the things that you can't control, right? The third one, does anybody remember what that one was? It was, what was it? Happiness. I think it was happiness. It was happiness. Yes, it was happiness, and understanding how to control all of these crazy senses of ours. And how do we do that? Life hack number 4, meditation. It's just meditating through it. Number 5 is the goal of life and understanding what that is. Number 6 is something beautiful called free will, right? Because we're all here on a Sunday in April, all different parts of the world. Krishna says in the final 18th chapter of the Gita, he says, Arjuna, dude, like I literally have given you all of the golden nuggets of life. I've given you everything. I've given you all of the clues, all of the hints, all of the gems. But at the end of the day, what you do with this knowledge is totally up to you. You can walk away and not listen to anything that I've said, or you can take this knowledge and you can use it for your benefit and for the benefit of humanity. The choice is yours. And that's another life hack, right? Because nobody wants forced love. Nobody wants forced spirituality. Nothing that is forced comes from love, right? Like if you have to force something, then it's not authentic. And so at the end of the day, chapter 18, that ultimate life hack is free will. We can walk away from this conversation on a Sunday and not take anything in, or we can take all of these life hacks in and try to use them every single day. But at the end of the day, it's always up to you, right? And so I hope these life hacks have been beneficial to you guys. And again, Rome wasn't built in a day, right? These life hacks take practice, and the Gita takes like years and years of study. But I broke it down in a way that makes sense. And thank you so much for having me, guys. And I hope this was a beneficial talk for you guys. Thank you. Oh, there's a thank you slide. I forgot there's a thank you slide there. That was official. All right.
Thank you so much. That was awesome. Like just the slides and the pictures and the way you broke down all these life hacks and like super easy to understand, relatable ways. And it was also funny. Yeah, it was also hilarious. So thank you so much. So now I'm going to pass it over to Brajarani, and she's gonna lead the rest of the Sangha and get us into breakout rooms.
Thank you so much, Sangita. That was really that was memorable, and I'm going to take a lot of that away and share with others. So thank you very, very, very much. I am sorry, everybody, that we didn't have chat on. I know people wanted to just like say some things and chime in the midst of that, and I'm sorry I couldn't make that happen. But we're going to break down into small groups. Syama, Sangita, you have a couple of things that we should be topics to talk about in these small groups?
100%. So I want you guys to think about those 5 or 6 life hacks, right? We talked about meditation. We talked about that was my timer to stop talking. Great. So we're right on time. So we talked about, body versus soul. We talked about detachment. We talked about happiness. We talked about purpose of life. We talked about meditation. Now, which of those life hacks are most important for your life hacking through life? Like, what are the most important ones that that you're working on or that you need to work on in order to have a more spiritual filled, more productive, more efficient life? That's the question. All right.
Beautiful. Okay. Right. So these life hacks that we've discussed, which one or ones are for you right now for fulfillment? That might change next week, right? Might change tomorrow, even. Right? But at this moment, what seems most important? So we're gonna break down into groups for about 10 minutes. We will be in groups of about 2 to 3 people, and so that you can interact with each other, and we'll bring you back in about 10 minutes or so.
Is this our breakout group?
No, you have a breakout group that you didn't respond to, which is group
didn't see it.
4. I can move you to it. I'll move you to it.
Okay, sorry, I didn't get it.
You didn't get it. I don't know why you didn't get it, but it's a group with Malati.
Okay.
And maybe you didn't get it because I don't know why you didn't get it. I'm gonna put this, hold on a second. Welcome back, everyone. Everyone's not quite back yet, so we'll wait till another 10 seconds and everyone will pop back in here. I think that should be everyone. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had some beautiful conversations. And I'm wondering if anyone would like to sort of share some of the discussion you've been having about the life hack that is particularly meaningful for you at this moment in your life. Anyone can just share.
Just speak out. Just
Yes,
go.
just speak out. You want to
Okay.
speak?
I love the Syama Sangita. I loved your whole presentation. You are making deep things very fun and accessible. So I loved it so much. And in particular, I wanted to mention how I loved how you explained detachment, because, we in our own minds can like trick ourselves. We can hack our own selves and trick ourselves that if I'm detached, then that means I don't care about that person. And that means that I'm just apathetic and I'm not really trying to love that person properly. So I was in a wonderful group with my dear friend Krishna Drew. I was so lucky to be in a group with her, just the two of us. And yeah, we were talking, sharing so many treasures. I love the enemy ship of the mind. Yeah, which ship do I want to be on, really? The friendship or the enemy ship? And do I want to take 14 dogs out for a walk without a leash? I mean, maybe I do that all the time and I don't even realize it. So those are a few treasures that, yeah. Free will. We talked a lot about free will. Yeah. And also, here's what we talked about, Krishna and I. We talked a lot about, I have my own free will, but my child, my partner, everyone in my life has their own free will as well. And I can't force them to do what I think is the best thing for them in this moment or in this life. I have to honor their free will and put it at Krishna's feet, put them We're talking about putting them right on the whirl of the lotus of Krishna's feet. Krishna has his 2 feet, one is crossed over, and then there's this space in the middle for you to put your kids and your partner and your everybody right in that empty space there. So that's kind of what we discussed.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And especially that last one. I have a thing for lotus feet. So that's I'm definitely going to walk away with that one. Thank you, Rukmini. Anyone else from your groups, your discussions?
Sure, I'd be happy to talk. I was really, for me, I starred Your Mind Can Be Your Best Friend or Your Mortal Enemy. And I think that a lot of people struggle with that day to day, from being, you know, like, do I need to eat this like the cinnamon roll situation, or, you know, or something even in larger. And in our group, we talked a lot about the interconnection of all of them. I mentioned that in the Gita, things are laid out very specifically to get to each of those life hacks. And, you know, if you can't detach, you can't have happiness. And if you don't have happiness, then you can't have peace. So having all of those pieces being so interconnected was such an important, at least from the talk that, you know, my group had, I thought that was the most important piece, was like just how interconnected all of these things are. And Rukmini, I really loved what you had to say about free will. That was really needed. I needed to hear that. And actually was just going to do a live about detachment. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for your shares.
Beautiful. Who else would like to share from your groups, conversations? Kamal, actually. Not
Yes.
sorry.
Yes, thank you, Mataji. Yeah, so we also had a really good and soul-filling conversation. Appreciate the association with the fellow Matajis. I think that one thing that came in out of the 3 of us, 2 of us felt connected with the body and soul life hack, because, you know, 2 of us had a loss in our family, you know, years ago or recently, and when Mataji shared about her father and the reminder of chapter 2 and reading chapter 2 to understand life hack number 1, in that you know, it's just very profound. So one of the points that we spoke about was just understanding life hack 1, body versus soul, especially when one loses a loved one, or the loved one, you know, just leaves this body. So just that understanding was, you know, that part of the conversation was profound. And again, we also spoke about detachment and the relationship between life hack 1 and life hack 2 about detachment, right? And that reminder in our day to day. So yeah, so thank you for creating the space to speak about it.
Thank you. More on the interconnectedness of all of these things too. Who else would like to, just some thoughts from your group conversation?
Hey, Krishna friends. I'm sorry, I don't remember how to do the raise hand.
Okay, go ahead.
So years ago, towards the beginning of my yoga journey, I was in an asana class, and the teacher came in and he said, I don't think that I can share this any better than the Swami, different lineage, but then the Swami who said it. And so he had us lay in Shavasana and played a YouTube recording. And it was Swami Satyananda, who is part of, he has a commentary on the Yoga Sutras. And he talked about how happiness is like a little child chasing a shadow. The kid thinks, if I catch the shadow, I'll find happiness. And they run around and they run around trying to catch a shadow, but you can't catch a shadow. You can't catch your happiness. And eventually they just piddle out on the floor and fall asleep and forget about this longing and this chasing. And that's the material world. We're longing and we're chasing happiness that we can't actually catch. And so what you should do is turn around, face the sun, go within, and see that that's where true happiness lies. And I really pondered on that. And I actually have tattoos that teach me and remind me of these lessons. But so then I went to the teacher, and I said, young guy, like 20, I think it was 22 at the time, super young guy. But I said, all right, I got a bone to pick with you. We need to talk about this a little more, because what if one time I ran hard enough and I chased hard enough, and for one split second, I caught it. Now I know what it feels like to hold that shadow in my hands. But I know I'll never be able to run hard enough and fast enough to catch it again. And this young 22-year-old kid, who I think has only ever had one girlfriend, like has no house, no car, his whole happiness comes from being a dog trainer. He was like, that's easy, detachment. And he just walks away as if it's nothing. That's so easy, right? I'm like, how do I learn that? And this is the part that I shared in the group, is that I would sit for a while at the beginning of my journey. I don't consume alcohol anymore now because I'm on a bhakti path, and I never had a problem with it. But for a while, I would sit with a margarita on the full moon night, and I would just sit on my deck and I would look at the moon, and I would just ponder the moon and how beautiful it is, and how we want to hold it and we want to keep it. And we pull out our cell phone and we try to take a picture of it so that we can hold it and show everyone else how beautiful it is. But we can't, because our cell phones don't have the technology. It's just not good enough. You can never capture what the moon looks like. It's glorious, radiant beauty. So the only choice is to just sit there that one night of the month and fully be present, body and soul, in its beauty. Full appreciation, fully in the moment, and then it goes away, and we have absolutely no choice. We can't hold it. We can't make it stay. We can't tell it to sit in timeout and stay. It just goes, and we have to let it go. And then there's nothing, no longing, no crying, no nothing we can do to make it come back. We just have to wait. And in the next cycle, it comes back. And if we're lucky, we remember when it goes what we survived. It left. And that was the other point that I shared, is that I built faith in detachment, which I still struggle with. Like the thought of, my children are all alive, but I lost my children in a way. I lost my dad, I lost my grandma, I lost my grandpa. I remember sitting on a milk crate behind a dumpster. I can't lose anymore. I can't do it again. But I built faith when I came to this path by seeing how I thought I couldn't lose this thing. And then I did, and I survived. And I see how it worked out for my better. Or I coveted and I wanted this situation to work out my way, and it didn't. And so then I see how it turned out for the better. And so when I do still struggle with detachment, that's what I reflect to. I try to sit in the space of, right now, you really think you can't survive without this thing. But remember when you thought that about X, Y, or Z. Right now, you think this is the only way that it can work out. But remember when you thought that about this job or house or boyfriend or whatever, and it didn't work out that way, and now you're in a better place because of it. Yeah. And so for me personally, I feel like through Krishna's mercy, I've been led in these experiences to help me learn these lessons. And it's a matter of sitting in the meditation to remember them and not forget them when the struggles come back up, I really miss my dad. Well, wait, let's go sit in chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita and remember that he's still out there. When the fear of, what if this relationship fails like all the other ones did? Well, remember how they did fail and look at how much happier you are now. So for me, that's kind of where I sit. Thank you for your association and the opportunity to share.
Thank you, Michelle, for sharing something so deep, connected, real. Syama, Sangita.
Thank you so much. I mean, the one that I'm really working on now, and I talked about this in our group, is the meditation aspect, right? It's like if you can crack that code, and if you could just like listen to your japa with attention and with love, and or even if you're doing a breathing exercise and you can just do that with like intention, I think you've cracked the code, right? Because you've managed to figure out how to make your mind your friend. And I think that that's what I'm working on right now, is just like understanding the importance of just sitting down and meditating and listening and focusing is like a game changer. And I think that's going to be something that I work on every single day for the rest of my life. Yeah.
Anyone have any questions or comments of Syama Sangita or of our dear Rukmini Devidasi? You can put it in the chat. You can just speak out if you want to. We got another 15 minutes of just questions.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Thanks. This is for anyone who feels they have an answer. I would appreciate Syama Sangita and Rukmini, your insight. Your point about detachment. And by the way, thank you for such a wonderful presentation. I mean, I really loved it. I took lots of notes, but I don't think I needed the notes because it all kind of stuck because it was so funny and well presented. So thank you. On your point about detachment, I loved your formula. You broke it down. Try your best and give up worry about the outcome. So something I find myself returning to is the question of what does it mean to try your best? And how do you get to a place where you feel comfortable or confident that, yes, that really was my best, versus going to a place where you could beat yourself up, almost eternally. If you don't have an understanding of what that benchmark is, how do you know when you've gotten there? And that can be about service or just, something you're accomplishing in your own life, like career, anything really.
I love to throw this out, but the way that I know is that my body tells me, right? It's like listening to your body, right? And I remember I used to study like crazy for midterm exams, and there came a point where my body, like my brain could not handle any more information. Like I would just pull all-nighters and try to retain as much as possible. But I think a good part of that is like your body will tell you when it can no longer go, right? Whether you're studying for an exam or you're going in for a job interview or it's service related, right? Your body will tell you that like, okay, this is my, like, and it's a matter of listening to it too, right? A lot of times we don't listen and we overexert, and that's not good. Or sometimes we don't listen and we underexert, right? So it's a matter of just like really, really being following your intuition and listening to your body. That's for me, but I'd love to throw that out to anybody else who has an answer to that.
That was great.
I hope that helps, Malti.
Yeah, that was
Very much. Thank you. Rukmini, do you have any advice for me?
Well, you just reminded me, Syama Sangita, there's a best-selling book. It's on the bestseller list called The Body Keeps the Score. I don't know, and it's a little bit clinical, but there's a lot of information about how the mind can trick us, but the body actually doesn't trick us. We'll get those messages. You get that kind of sick feeling. So I love your answer, Syama Sangita. You get that kind of sick feeling in the pit of your stomach, like, this just is not working, So I think that's a brilliant, and it's, to me, that's so much on the bhakti side, on the divine feminine side of what we're doing here. Bhakti yoga is kind of a leaning into the more intuitive feminine side of interconnectivity, connecting with the body, soul, and mind. And I really loved this session. I thought, I love all of your quirky little examples, that, what did you say that the dog, I see my friend Geeta tuned in and she's a dog lover. I texted her while you're talking, Syama Sangita, and said, she's talking about dogs. You have to click on. So I love your example that, the soul is the holder of the leash And the dog is the senses, right? And if you're walking 14 dogs without a leash, you're going to have a crazy mess, and you're going to lose your dog walking license. So I just think these are all little wonderful, great hooks for us. And I love the way, Michelle, you were speaking in such a deep and sensitive way about detachment and how things work out in a different way, that we had so much fear that what if things don't work out the way I planned. But I think it's so important to understand that. I love what you said, Shama Sangita, about how no one actually dies, and we can sort of we can revive them by our intention, and we can talk to them, we can offer them, and talk about those losses with people who are sensitive and are not going to just smash us down and hammer our heads over some type of something too rigid. But talk about that person, talk about that loss, and mourn and grieve that loss with someone with your journal, but do it externally with someone who cares, with someone you can be sensitive with, or with your own journal. And then that eternal quotient that is still a living thing, that person, or I love that. Just I have so many treasures, so many takeaways from this. Do things from the goodness of your heart. I love that. That was very, very precious to me. So this is pure bhakti in a very accessible way, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. Somehow, yeah, bhakti's come to New York and California and all these places, and we have to discern it in ways that are accessible and relatable to us. We have to make it our own. It's not someone else's. Gosh, I was at somebody's house the other day, and she had something on her fridge that said that when someone gives her drama, it says, "This is not my circus, and these are not my monkeys." So yeah, to be able to live in your own sacred space, and let the other circus and let the other monkeys go, that those are someone else's monkeys and someone else's circus, and you don't have to own that drama, misappropriate that drama. This was great. What else? I'm talking so much, but I'd love to hear from you.
I have a question, but I don't know if it's the right question. I'm just wondering, I'm new to the group. I'm very grateful for Mataji Carolina for inviting me. Where can we find Mataji Syama Sangita, your comedy? Like where can we find more about you and follow you? Would love to continue following you.
Oh, that's so sweet. I'm on Instagram and TikTok mostly. That's where I live. So I'll put my handles into the chat. But I routinely do I tried to make Eastern spirituality more accessible. So a lot of my videos are about like different like Hindu holidays, but like how is that relevant to modern day society now? You know what I mean? And so like I talk about a lot of that kind of stuff. I do a lot of stuff on yoga and meditation, but trying to make it funny and accessible. And I was like also a little bit younger skewed because I'm on the TikTok crowd. So I'm trying to appeal to spirituality to like teenagers. And so like trying to use language that is more colloquial, I guess you could say, but just trying to make it more accessible for younger kids who are on TikTok and are trying to learn more about yoga and meditation and the Gita, but they might not know it's like stuff from the Gita, but like trying to make those concepts more accessible on Instagram and TikTok. So I'll put my handles in the chat.
Thank you, Mataji.
That's really cool. That's really cool, being on TikTok and the accessibility, right? How do we continue to take these beautiful teachings and make them accessible, right? People are looking so much for spirituality that makes sense to them, that they can work, and we've got it, but how do we make it accessible to people? So thank you so much. Other questions, comments, thoughts, reflections? Champak, how about you?
Yeah, I just really loved everything. And when we were in our breakout groups, yeah, we were talking, what stuck out for me was that if I can practice my meditation with the intention of the goal of like remembering the goal of life to serve and love the divine Krishna, who I call Krishna, then if I can do that, then automatically the other things will come. The detachment will come. The realization of the body versus soul will come. The happiness will come, because I can just relate to, I think it was Michelle who was talking about the chasing the shadow and how we can never catch the shadow. Like, thank you so much for sharing that, Michelle. Because I definitely have a tendency, I think we all do, to think that the external things in our life are going to bring us happiness, and to be like chasing and reaching after those things, and thinking that happiness is going to come when we get those things. And for me, if I can just keep bringing the mind back, like we did in exercise, to my meditation every day, and go very, very deep in my meditation and feel my relationship with the divine, with Krishna, and put my happiness in that, then automatically I stop reaching for those I stop putting my identity in those external things. But that leads me to my question for Syama Sangita, because also we should in our life, it's not like we should not care what situation we find ourselves in externally. Like it's part of our duty to put ourselves in a favorable situation, and a favorable service for our practice of bhakti. Like, it's not like we're going to be like, oh, I'm just going to be detached, so therefore I'm going to stay in this bad situation or this bad environment or this bad relationship or whatever because I'm detached from it. No, we should like remove ourselves from the bad and put ourselves in a good. And that does, like, I know for me, like I recently, when I moved to Florida in January, like my happiness level really increased a lot, because I absolutely loved where I was. I loved what I was doing. And I felt so like totally alive. So although our happiness doesn't come from external things, ultimately, like being in good situations does help. So how can we as spiritual practitioners, like, when is it the time to be like striving for that external thing? And what mood should we strive for that external thing in? And when is it time to be like, let go of that external thing and be really detached? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
A little bit. I'm going to focus on the first part of your question. Is like, I think a big component of what you mentioned is self-awareness, right? And I think for me, self-awareness comes through more meditation and like understanding, like spending time with myself. The moment we, like, our lives can be so crazy and we have 117 different things that we need to do on a daily basis. But the moment we slow down a little bit, we spend a little bit more time with ourselves, I think our level of self-awareness increases, right? And therefore we can determine what is a conducive environment to our spirituality and what's not a conducive environment to our spirituality. And I use that in term relatively. Environment can be in our minds, it can be in our actual surroundings, it can be the people that we associate with, is like understanding what would be conducive to ultimately that goal of life, right? That bhakti yoga, that connection with Krishna. And we've all been there. We've all been in situations where we're like, all right, I know hanging out with that person is not good for my bhakti. I know hanging out with these people is better. I need to spend more time doing that. Or this job is making me so busy and so crazy that I don't have time for bhakti. I need to find a way to find a balance, right? And it's through self-awareness and through meditation where you can sort of put the gauge on that. Does that help? I'm not sure if I answered the second part of your question, but if you could repeat that. Yeah, okay. Okay. But yeah, I think it's like self-awareness through meditation is key, especially for me, is understanding, okay, like what is going to be more conducive to my spiritual health.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Syama Sangita. We are at about time.
I need to check out of my hotel.
Okay, great. Rukmini, I think you have maybe a closing thought and announcement, and then we will.
Yeah, thank you so much. Syama Sangita, this is a very integrated perspective, integrated with, body, mind, self, and also with our culture and where we are right now in our own place, in our own, body, mind environment in our culture, like the microcosm, the macrocosm, the super macrocosm. So I'm so grateful to you. I'm so grateful for who you are and what you're doing and what you've contributed here to this, Sacred Women's Sangha. And so please come back. We demand that you'll be a regular. Rajarani's shaking her head. We want you to be back with us on a regular basis because you're bringing it all home in a very real way that's essential for all of us. So thank you, and thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I do have to run because I do have to check out, but thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you guys so much.
Okay, you will be
have a good one.
Thank you so much.
Have a good one, guys.
All right, well, and then I wanted to tell you all that I'm really excited. So we had a most engaging presenter this month in April, and we have another super engaging presenter next month in May. What's the date, Rani? Whoops, I should have had that right here. But in May, and I'm looking for the date, we have our next Urban Devi is May 22nd, Sunday, May 22nd. And this time Syama Sangita is a stand-up comic. Next month, we have someone who's a professional clown, Jamuna Jaya. She goes into hospitals and she clowns around with children who are in some very difficult and sometimes life-threatening situations. So, and she brings bhakti to that work. So she's going to talk about, her title is, what exactly is self-care? So another very relevant topic. I'm really looking forward to it. Very much integrating the head and the heart and the true self on the bhakti path. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for your deep and wise contributions. All my deepest gratitude to all of you. I have to close this so I can see all your faces. Thank you, Malati. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Brajarani, Lee, Kamal, Michelle, Champak Lata, Susan, Krishna Drew, Anita, Geeta, and Diane. Those are all the faces I'm looking at. Is anybody else invisible that I'm not seeing? I think that's everybody, but this is a great session as far as I'm concerned. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for this sacred time together.
We've posted the 2 links to our WhatsApp groups. And if you would like to support Rukmini in all the work that she does out there in the world, then you can go to Patreon/Rukmini Walker. See you all in a month as you focus on your life hacks. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.